we're supposed to talk after seeing that.
I know, he like wrecked me all over again.
Good morning.
Good morning, y'all. Oh, y'all are too quiet. I'm used to kids' church.
Good morning.
There they are. There they are.
We're so honored to get to be here this morning and just share with you a portion of what we were able to see God do on this trip, even before the trip, in the preparation. He's just so good. He's so big. And if you wonder if God does miracles anymore, I can tell you he does miracles. We just have to be willing to see what he's doing in our life. And that video that you got to see was just about 4 hours of our trip. It was one particular thing that we were able to do, which we're going to share a little bit more about in a bit, but that was where we went to the children's hospital, and that kind of wrecked us a lot.
Yeah, kind of a lot. Yeah, that's pretty accurate.
Yeah, kind of a lot.
It was amazing, but man, God just shows up and shows off. And we were talking about even before the trip began, I don't know how many of you know me super well, but I kind of pride myself on organization and like having things in their proper place. And Leanne's already smiling. She's like, oh, Stacia. So before the trip started months ago, Leanne had said, hey, we're going to go to El Salvador. And I'm like, yeah, let's go. I love to travel. I love to do mission stuff. And I waited until like the week before to go get my passport out of the vault, right? Like it's at my parents' house. I'll go get it out of the vault. Well, I pull that bad boy out and it's expired. It's a week before the trip. And if you've ever gone to get a passport renewed, you know that it takes 5 to 8 weeks. And I was like, Lord, what did I do? I have just bombed this whole thing. Like, you set it up and you're doing all the things. And I dropped the ball. Like, oh gosh. So I had my little panic moment and tearful, cry it out in the car and scream a little bit. And then I started frantically just calling every passport office and like, how do I do it? I need like magical favor of the Lord. How do I fix this? And y'all, I'll say it again and again. When he tells you to do something, he's gonna help you get it done. And oh man, if you don't know, there are only 26 offices in the United States of America where you can renew your passport immediately, like day or two max. There's 26 offices. They require these like special appointments. And so I'm calling and calling and calling. I need one of those appointments, please, 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 please. And I had to have every documentation under the sun, marriage license and old passport and all the things. But they said, hey, we've got an appointment in Honolulu. I was like, listen, if I go to Hawaii, I'm gonna get lost and then like not be able to make the trip. If I go to Hawaii, I'm staying. So I kept calling and kept calling. Finally, they had an appointment open up in El Paso. My in-laws blessed me big and said, you're not driving alone to El Paso. We're gonna send you on a flight. Please let us do this for you. We know that you're supposed to go to El Salvador. Let's get this done. And so thank you, Jim and Shannon. Again, I love you. So they sent me to El Paso. I rented a car for the first time. I feel like I'm a real adult now. Rented a car, did the whole thing, and y'all, favor. I went up, gave them, every documentation under the sun. The girl was laughing at me because I was like, do you want the original or a photocopy or which one you want? But in 3 hours, they called me and handed me a brand new passport, which doesn't happen. Like, that just doesn't happen. And the only reason I brag on God in that way is because even beforehand, Satan knew that we were about to like kick some booty, right? Like he knew they were about to go accomplish some stuff for Christ, and he was doing everything he could before the trip even began to try to tear us down. And when you set your heart and you set your mind and you say, no, God told me to do this, and I'm not going to let an obstacle or a thing get in the way. I'm gonna pursue this to the end. He shows up and he shows off, and he just kept doing it the whole trip, just over and over.
He did. So she walked out of that passport office on Tuesday. We flew out on Thursday.
Correct.
It's a miracle, y'all.
Like
it is. Just to back up to tell you about this trip, back in the spring, I had a Pastor and I had a beautiful meeting with Pastor Mercy, who is connected to our church. She's a dear friend. She's here this morning. And she came and she invited us to these 2 occasions to speak at their church. And this is her home church that she grew up in. She lives here in Dallas now, but it's an honor to be connected and to be friends, to be ministry friends. And she came and she presented these invitations to us. And in my heart and my spirit, it was an immediate yes. But I knew we had to pray. We had to figure out if the schedule worked out, be responsible leaders. And I remember the immediate yes. But as we talked through it, and he said, no, I can't go with you to speak at this women's conference, my flesh said, oh, well, I can't go because I haven't left the country without you since this pandemic happened. And no, I can't do that. So I was shut down for a little bit. And he was like, yes, you can. And I was like, I don't feel like that big of a girl. And so I had to really pray. And I was like, God, am I supposed to do this? I can't go without you, but I really didn't want to go without my man. And so as I prayed about it, I heard the Lord say, yes, you're supposed to go. I want you to take the women on staff and your female board member, and y'all are going to go. And I was like, okay, here's a plan. I've got a team. Pastor Vivian, she was a police officer back in Brazil. She'll take care of us.
I was feeling confident with her.
Yeah, all the
She's
things.
got it.
And so I heard, and so I was able to accept and move on. And I'm thankful that I heard the immediate yes, and I'm thankful that the Lord confirmed that and didn't let me chicken out. And so I just wanted to honor Pastor Mercy, who is here. She's the reason that we got to go. And so do you mind standing for me? Pastor Mercy has opened so many doors for this to happen, and we just want to honor you today. And we just have a small thank you to you for opening the door that we could walk through. Thank you, Pastor Mercy. We love her. I just want to also say she is our Friday night speaker for our women's conference. It's really amazing how God's entangled their event and our event so beautifully. And so thank you for being here today. But in order to go, we had to say yes. And so you've heard how we kind of got there. But as we started preparing and praying, we heard from Pastor Mercy of just so many opportunities for ministry, one of which was the Children's Hospital. And she began to share with us the great need of these patients, of these parents, even of the doctors, because this is the only public children's hospital in El Salvador and the region, to my understanding. It's the only one with the best equipment. And even with the best, they still have needs. And as we were praying and prepping and hearing and learning, I was like, okay, well, let's take them some stuff. We'll take the moms some stuff. And, we can do that, God.
Miniature hygiene things, or some stickers for the kids, something.
We can do that. But the Lord put it on Lisa Acevedo's heart first she was like, we're going to take $1,000 worth of stuff. I'm going to talk to all my friends, and we're going to raise some money.
Let's do it.
We were all like, okay, Lisa, that's cool, $1,000. Yeah, let's do that. And then that night she went home and the Lord said, no, I'm going to give you $3,000 worth of raised to take things.
Yeah.
And so I was sharing with Pastor Mercy, Lisa believes God's going to raise $3,000 that we can take for this hospital project. And she began to share with me, well, I think I know why God's put that number on her heart, because she had just heard from a doctor, the leader of the ICU unit there, that they had a need for training mannequins for infants, because there's many infants and children that require intubation and they have no way to train, and that creates great problems.
Yeah, a lot of hurt.
And so I don't want to say all of the things, but through more than just Lisa raising money, through various ways of it coming in, we were able to take over $5,000 worth of supplies.
It was so good. Like, we started out with what we thought was like, wow, $1,000. Like, yeah, let's do it.
Yeah.
And God's like, oh, honey, like, I got more for you.
And the thing is, that was in 2.5 weeks.
Yeah, like that wasn't, a year's worth of fundraising. That was in 2.5 weeks. God just like, hey, let me speak to some people's hearts. And when they say yes, it's going to empower you to say yes to more things too. And so, man, it was so cool.
Did we get to take an intubation mannequin?
Oh, man. So the director of the ICU unit, said, hey, over here, these mannequins, they're infant-sized and they're difficult to get. They're costly. And so I started looking and calling all of my nurse friends and like, hey, how do we get this here? How big are they? What do they need? And we were able to find them here for like a 1/7 of the
90?
cost or something, like crazy cheap here compared to what it was costing them to get them there. And so instead of taking one mannequin, we were able to take 8 training mannequins to their team. It was
8.
amazing. Their director, not only was he like excited about the gift, obviously, some of the first things that I got to translate in my brain were him talking to another doctor about the impact that they would be able to have. He's like, oh, we can take these mannequins and after we train our team, we can take them to the hospital down here and this hospital up there, and we're going to be able to influence so many kids and so many doctors and nurses and families, because now our team is going to be properly trained and then they can train people. Like, he already had a vision for how he was able to share what we had shared with them. And so, man, It was so cool. It was so cool.
Which was amazing, because when I heard we had 8, first I heard we had 4, and I was like, 4, that's so amazing,
4.
God. 4. They only asked for 1, that's amazing. And then I heard that we had 8. It's a funny little story, but
How are we going to fit this in our luggage?
I was like, God, 8? 8 of them?
There's only 4 of us. We have 50-pound bags.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
And I was asking the Lord, I was like, is 8 excessive? Are we missing it? Are we supposed to do something, like take something else and not 8? Like, that seems like so many. And I just saw this picture of a room full of people training, and I felt the peace. Yes, take the 8. Figure it out. Put it in your suitcase. Take less clothes. And so we took them. And then when that doctor was sharing, they're going to share, that they're going to train, the Lord just confirmed to me, see, I told you. See, I told you. They needed 8. They asked for 1, but the impact of 8 is so much more. And that's what he does. And you talked about all the suitcases. We each took
all the suitcases, y'all.
We each took an extra suitcase, and we maxed it with things that we were taking. And Pastor Mercy had shared with us how we needed to be very careful that we didn't get checked, and we didn't have to pay taxes on these things, and like it cost more than what the things cost, and we needed to have our documentation in order. A huge deal was we received a letter, an official letter on government letterhead from the director of the hospital, inviting us to come with our 4 names on it.
With our actual names on it.
Saying, yes, they're invited to bring all these things into the country for our hospital.
Yeah.
That's a huge deal.
Yeah.
A huge deal. That was a move of God just saying, I've got you, I've got you, I've got you. Yeah. And so we had each 2 checked bags, a carry-on suitcase, and then I had my big duffel bag. And I was falling over my suitcases in the airport, and Pastor Stacia was helping me get a cart. And we were nervous that we were going to get checked, and they're going to go through our bags and all these things. But you know what we did? What did we do?
Prayed it out.
But and then what did we do? We walked through there like we were invisible.
It was like they didn't even see us. Like, oh, there's 4 Americans with tons of luggage. They're good. They didn't check a bag. They didn't, make us prove any documentation. Hey, where is all this stuff going? Are you trying to sell it? Nothing. We had just check all the way through. It was amazing.
We have a picture of all of our bags. I think they're all in the shot. If you have it.
I don't know if
ready.
you can see them. We had them kind of
Like,
piled on.
look at all
It
those
was-
bags. That's us
intense.
smiling once we were outside the airport because God had seen us through.
But what's
And-
cool about the luggage is that, like, that wasn't our personal luggage. Like, sometimes I can pack too many shoes, but that was not our stuff. Like, that's what God was able to give through people saying yes, through people saying, hey, I want to be a part of this. Hey, I know that you're supposed to go. Hey, I want to invest in this trip. And we took, 400 pounds of supplies to another country, plus what we were able to get there. Like, that's God, y'all. We couldn't have planned that if we tried. Like, that was all God, all the things that those bags represent. Man, so good.
It was amazing. And then when we went to the hospital Friday morning, we were rolling up to the hospital, like, had our official vest on with the organization that we are partnering with, that is the social arm of their church in El Salvador. And we were all ready, and I was about to put my mask on, and for me personally, I realized, oh, I'm about to go into a hospital wearing a mask, into an ICU unit, and the last time I was in that circumstance was the worst day of my life. And I got really emotional and almost panicky in the van. And my team prayed for me, and I was like, okay, it's not about me. It's about what we're here to do for you, God. So we go, we meet the doctor. I think there's some pictures at the hospital. That's all of the stuff. Those trash bags are not trash, they're goodies. And we're preparing, and the very first spot we go to is the ICU. It is 16 beds of kids that are in the most dire of health circumstances. And
My mama heart wasn't ready.
no,
Not at all.
we were able, like, they don't let people into this unit because they're so sick. And somehow we received an invitation to go. The parents only get 30 minutes a day with their kids. And all of the kids in this unit, but one, are intubated, I believe. Is what we encountered.
Yeah, they were intubated and in an induced coma, basically.
They were in need of God's move, and we were able to pray over them. They let us, as we felt comfortable, some of us lay hands on them.
When we went in, they were saying they don't let very many people into this. The parents don't get very much time with them. And sometimes I got a big mouth. And I said, cool, can we touch them? And they're like, yeah. I did not expect them to say yes. I thought they were going to say, glove up, stay back, all the things. But they let us go up to these kids and lay hands on them and lay hands on their bed and pray for them by name. We were reading their name tags. We were seeing how long they'd been there. And man, to just watch doors open and God say, hey, I'm ordaining this moment. I'm ordaining this time. I'm giving you divine appointments. You're not just going to stand on the sidelines and, like, from a distance, God, do something over there. I'm going to let you be a part of this. And so to be able to actually walk in and hold their hands and put our hands on them and say, hey, God loves you so much. He's got a plan for you. Those first couple beds, like, you can't prepare enough, right? Like, especially as a parent, one of the first ones, they said, this is so-and-so, and he's 17 months. Well, my daughter is 17 months. And so immediately you connect, right? And I wasn't emotionally ready, but at the same time, like, even in the hardness of it, even in the, like, power of the moment, God just kept using my mouth to say things, and usually in the right language. It was amazing. Just, hey, speak life over this kid as a mom. Hey, pray for this kid as a mom. Like, the way that we love on our kids, the way that we forgive our kids even when they mess up, even the way that we invest in our kids and plead over them, I want you to do that because these are my kids. And I need you to plead over them like that. And so even as I'm, like, weeping over some of them, those words just kept coming out, and, like, love on them as if they were your own, pray over them as if they were your own. And even being able to be there and do that, I just kept saying, God, thank you for letting me do this. As hard and crazy as it is, thank you for letting me be able to be here and plead over them as a mom, love on them as a mom. It was crazy. It's crazy.
It was really a very impactful time. You know, God he's into the big things. He's a global God. He's moving in the world, not just here in Dallas, right? He is, and he will send us out to the nations, but he's also a personal God, and he doesn't want to just say, well, he's so big that he can work globally and personally all in the same moment. And for me, if you don't know, back in December, last November, December, my parents were both ill in the hospital in ICU with COVID. They both ended up passing away. They both had been intubated on a ventilator. And so when I walked into this ICU, I was not ready to see another person on a ventilator. And I was like, oh, Lord, you brought me here? I had known we were going. I knew it. I heard it. I planned it. And yet in that moment, it became very personally difficult for me. But God he's so big that he can use you in a moment to minister to someone else, and he's simultaneously ministering to your own heart. And I can't explain it, except that he reminded me that, and I was processing it the whole week, honestly, and I still am, but he told me in the preparation for this trip and for our conference, which happened to be in the same month, which is insane in the natural, our conference and going to El Salvador the same month. But he told me that for me personally, he was going to relaunch me in September. And I was like, wow, I need that, God, because I've been in this hard desert this year, and I may seem like a lot of days I'm good, but I also cry in the bathroom a lot because I miss my mom. And so while I'm there, I realized that on September 1st, he flew me to El Salvador. The very next day, he launched the ministry there in an ICU unit to kids who are intubated. Y'all, I didn't do that. God is so big that he can work globally for someone else and do a crazy thing in your own heart. So saying yes to this trip, I was like, yeah, we gotta go. I had no idea how detailed and intricate he is. Well, I know that, but what he was doing in this particular trip. And there's some more pictures from the hospital they've been going through. We met this young guy. It's hard to see him on the left. He wanted a picture with us. Pastor Vivian told him he could find us on Instagram, find the Lighthouse Dallas, and he was excited. There's also a picture, this doctor, he started speaking to me in Spanish, and I said, no hablo español. And he said, oh, well, where are you from, and why are you here? He spoke excellent English, and he began to share that he was over this particular unit and that he wanted to do so much for the kids. This was the happiest unit I walked into. There were decorations. It was joyful. And he was saying it's hard to get anyone to partner. He really wants to partner, and there's I'll butcher it in Spanish if I try. The Kids' Day was coming up on October 1st.
Día de los Niños.
Yeah, that. And he was wanting someone to help, so they had fun things for the kids. And I was like, well, we're not going to be here, but we have stuff. We can leave you. The Lord reminded me we had bags of extra stuff. We had extra things.
God multiplied things that I promise you we know how to do math, but we'd ordered, 200 things for the kids' bags and 200 things for the parents' bags. And then we got there, and there was more than that in our luggage. And I'm telling you, I only ordered 200. Lisa only ordered 200. And we get there, and it just had multiplied. And we were like, okay, well, we have extra. I don't know what that's for, but let's take it with us. And then they're doing this day for the kids that they want to be able to give them something. They didn't have anything to give. They just wanted to celebrate the kids. And we magically had this stuff in our bags. I'm like, come on, Lord, miracle after miracle after miracle. It was so exciting. It was so exciting.
Trash bags full of extra stuff.
Just so much extra.
And every parent, every kid there got the package we wanted to give.
It was awesome.
So that was 4 hours of our 1 week long trip.
Only 4 hours. It felt like it was days that we were there, just loving on them. But yeah, it went fast.
We also were there, as I mentioned, to speak at their women's conference. I had the honor of speaking on Friday night and on Saturday morning the conference, and my 3 team members, they signed up to speak at a workshop, and they thought they were going to be in a smaller setting room and share a testimony. And then it was so amazing. The conference had so many women sign up. There were 300 women there. 300 women, so many that they couldn't do the workshops the way they had planned, and it was all in the main sanctuary. And so they all got to get up on the main stage and share their testimonies, which I think scared them a little.
Ooh, it scared me a lot. I was so nervous. I was determined to do it in Spanish, but I don't get to use my Spanish as much as I would like to. And so those of you that speak Spanish, just don't talk to me in English anymore. Let's just, fix that. But I was so nervous. I had prepped my brain for okay, it'll be a small group and just 4 sessions, just do the same thing 4 times and you got it. And then I stood up on the stage and I was like, oh, there's 300 people in here and I'm gonna do this in a language that is not my first, and no lordy. And he just took my tongue and said, okay, you got this, do it in Spanish. And I had a translator there to hey, if I say something crazy, please correct me so they don't think I'm bonkers. And she never had to interrupt me, which I kept thinking was that, And she's like, you're good, keep going. But it was amazing. For me personally, 300 women intimidated me so much. I was not feeling confident about that at all. And the ladies at my table knew it. I was like, oh gosh, y'all, do you have a fan? Oh gosh, do you have a fan? Oh man, I'm so anxious. And they were like, Stacia, God brought you here. You've already seen him work all the things. Just say what he put on your heart. And he used it. He just used it. It was amazing.
And we kept hearing from each of the testimonies that our group shared, different women there from the church that related to it. And so I just want to tell you, your testimony is going to impact someone one day. Your story, your yes to share it, whether it's one-on-one or in front of 300 people in another language, whatever God asks you to do, your story can impact another believer. And Pastor Vivian and I each had the honor of speaking on Sunday morning in their church service, which was a blessing to be a part of. I got to share about serve others. I took a little bit of the lighthouse to El Salvador and was excited about that. Monday morning, we were a part of a training for teachers of the school. It's a Christian school that the church has, and they go from ages 2 through high school. And we were able to pour into teachers so they can go pour into the kids. And the next picture is with Pastor Stacia and Pastor Sandra, who is the principal or the director of the school. And in this particular scenario, I knew I'm not equipped because I've never taught, I've never trained teachers, I've never been in a classroom. It's not my career path or my gifting, but I knew the Lord put someone on my team who was just that person, who had been a teacher and knew what the struggles are. And she totally geeked out her own words over getting to teach some strategies and some things to these teachers that she learned when she was teaching. And what Pastor Stacia took was more than she could have known when God showed her what to put on there. But we were able, this book and this picture is something we were able to bless them with, was strategies of how to engage kids. Because when kids are just listening, they don't want to learn. But when you get them up moving and talking, they're going to learn better. And we were able to impart that. And I just want to say that she said it herself, but God will lead you on a path in your life, and you may say, oh, Lord, I'm sorry. I took the long way to get where you really wanted me. But he will take every bit of your life when you submit it to him and bring it into the fullness of his glory. And I got to witness that on Monday.
Thank you. It was really neat. You know, there were seasons of my life that I thought, man, I've had all of these crazy jobs. Like, God, like, get me where we're actually going, you know? And I loved teaching, but I only got to do it for 2 years. And so when I moved into ministry, I thought, well, that was 2 extra years. I could have been in ministry. Like, what was I doing? And God just said, no, like, I needed you there for that season. There were things that I learned in teaching trainings that I still use as a kids pastor. And this training was one that was done at the very beginning of my teaching career. Crazy, crazy impacts on how I approached my first classroom. And what's funny is my first year as a teacher, in Alvarado, they give you a mentor teacher for all first-year teachers. My mentor teacher happened to be Sherry Davis, who, if you know her, Eddie Davis is over Life Schools, which we now partner with. Sherry Davis was my mentor teacher, and that woman poured into me and loved on me and prayed over me. She would come into my classroom, and I would think, like, okay, she's here to, like, help me be a better teacher, but she was there to keep me sane and whole as a person so that I could be the best teacher. And God has used that time over and over and over. So to be able to take this to another nation, to another country, and just give them some strategies. I was hearing from first-year teachers and from the principal, like, God sent you this. Like, this was specifically for our team. This is what we needed. And for me, it was just the best thing that I knew. But God said, no, it's not just the best. I gave you this in that time for this reason. And so it was just again and again, like him showing up. It was crazy.
These are just pieces, snapshots of
Tiny
what
bits.
we got to experience with the Lord. The last picture I have is some more goodness of God.
The goodness of God.
I just had to share. This was what I ordered
The
our
goodness
last
of
night
God,
because I
y'all.
just needed all the Salvadorian food before we came home. But if I could just use this picture as an example, that there were many different things on the plate, and I ordered 2 drinks that night, horchata and a hot chocolate, all the things.
They brought it in like liters. You know, I was expecting like a glass of horchata. They're like, oh, let me give you a gallon. I'm like,
Yeah.
okay.
But if we could just see this picture as the different beautiful things on that plate, and that's what we got to experience, beautiful pieces of God, different things that he orchestrated together on that trip. He is alive and he's moving, and if you felt dry or stagnated or broken like I have this year, know that he is alive and he is for you. He is in you. He's not done with you. He will use you exactly how, when, where he wants to. And be encouraged. Pastor was talking about obedience, and I realized as I was making my notes that my obedience to say yes, even after it sounded hard to me, enabled others to say yes, making way for them to walk in obedience, to grow in their calling, to impact nations, and more than we'll probably ever know this side of heaven. And I say that humbly, that I could have said, no, that sounds too hard. And it was hard, but it was beautiful. And so when God asks you to do something that sounds hard and beyond yourself, just say yes and then watch him work. And I'm saying that to myself right now as I await all the registrations of our conference.
Do it now. Do it now. Come on, ladies, register. I know that with big groups and things like that, like women's conferences can be intimidating. I'll just say it. I was intimidated by this one, not just because it was in another culture and in another language, but because 300 women together, like, you know, who knows what that could look like? I don't know. It could get crazy. But
It was beautiful.
God did not design us to do life alone. He designed us to be in community. He designed us to help one another. You know, I got to room with my pastor. We're close, like we hang out, but I got to room with her. And like now we know each other on a whole nother level. She's like, don't share anything. No, we had so much fun. Like we were able to do life together as friends and as roommates. And call our spouses and laugh and joke with our kids and stuff on the phone. We weren't meant to do life alone. Ladies, you're not meant to do motherhood and parenthood and life and jobs and things alone. You're meant to be bolstered up in a community. You're meant to be loved on and encouraged. So be there, invest in yourself as a woman of God. Come, invite your friends. Don't do it alone. Invite your sisters and your aunts and your friends and everybody. Get them here. It's going to be amazing. But there was one last thing. I know, I'm like,
Okay.
There was one last thing
Share the
that
last
God said when I was looking at all of the like actual beauty of El Salvador. If you've ever been, like, natural beauty, it's stunning. There's mountains and trees, and like I kind of geeked out about all the plants. My husband is a little bit of a plant nerd. He loves plants. And so Lisa has a flower shop. She and I both were like, did you see that? Did you see that? It's beautiful everywhere. But the actual structures where people were living and doing their businesses, so many of them were done with recycled materials. It was pieces of sheet metal, pieces of bricks, things like that. And it was almost a clash between like God's natural beauty and the like scraps that people were using. And I kept processing it. And when I got back, he finally said, use what you have where you are. Use what you have where you are. I went with the teacher training that I knew, that I had, that I enjoyed, and he used it. And so it doesn't have to be some incredible thing that you're like, hey, I'm able to give $1,000. Maybe you're able to give $2. That $2 is going to go wherever God wants it to go. So use what you have where you are. It will make an impact. God's going to do it. It's not in you. It's in him. So use it. Use what you have, guys.